Hi everyone, and welcome to the latest dev update for Pixling World. My name is Fredrik Norn, and what you're seeing in front of you here is Pixling World, which is an artificial life simulation that I'm working on. So you can see the creatures here, I call them Pixlings, and they each have a neural network for brains, and then they kind of compete for survival against each other in this world, and then you see what kind of interesting behaviors evolve from this. So in this update, I've added a couple of things. So let's get into it. The first thing is that I've added these trees. So you can kind of see them here. And I've added these rocks as well. So let's zoom out a bit. And you can see there are a lot of trees in this world. So there are a couple of purposes to these things. First of all, I wanted to add something in the world that was blocking the path for Pixlings so that they couldn't just run anywhere in the world. So when I turn this on here, this actually shows which part of the world that the Pixlings can't walk on. And the same goes for the critters. They can't walk into a tree. And that's kind of the main purpose, because that means that there are now places where the Pixlings can kind of hide. They can go in between the trees and hide from other Pixlings. And they can also attack the trees and the rocks, so they can destroy them, even though it takes a while. But yeah, I think that's the big points about these new entities. The next thing I've added is a way for Pixlings to equip things. And there's actually one, oh, yeah, he was equipping this guy for a second there, but yeah, so let's actually jump into a different world that hasn't evolved as much. So let's look at this one. So the way this works now is that Pixlings can equip all kinds of things, and have two equipment slots. They can equip things in their hands, and they can equip things on their heads. Let's go up here into the mountain and see if we can't find some Pixling. Oh yeah, here's one guy that equipped a stone on his head, and it actually, I made it so that that actually gives them a little bit more armor. So it does make sense for them to equip stones on their heads. But they can equip all kinds of things. Here's another one with a stone. They can equip other Pixlings, like this guy here. And they can equip critters. I don't know if we're going to be able to find one that is doing it right now, but let's see if we can't find one of them here. Yeah, I can't see anyone doing it right now. But they can equip minerals, they can equip eggs. So sometimes you'll see them put an egg on their head. Yeah, I can't seem to find one that is equipping any critters now. But anyway, I think this will open up for a lot of interesting possibilities. For instance, they can, by having another Pixling on their head, those two can kind of collaborate and form a symbiosis. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but anyway, they can then collaborate and become better than what a single Pixling can be. And in the future, I want to add a lot more items into the world and make it possible to have all kinds of interesting states for the Pixlings to be in. So yeah, that was one thing I wanted to talk about. And then finally, I've made some updates to the brains. So they now actually have a couple of new things. One of them is what I call entity memories. So essentially, it's for each Pixling, they can now remember something about entities or things that they have encountered in the world. So when I turn on the visualization here, the one I turned on here, you can see what each Pixling is kind of remembering. So in this case, this guy is remembering some information about this tree, this Pixling, this other Pixling, and yeah, I don't know what this is, but So this is just at the beginning of the simulation. So what they are choosing to remember and for which items is completely random. But eventually, I hope that they will be able to use this to make better choices in their world and be able to remember things about other Pixlings, about other critters, and what state they're in, and how they reason about them. So yeah, that's one thing that I've added to their brains. Another thing is that they can now choose to focus on a lot of new things. They can so focusing is, you can kind of see these white things coming from them. That's actually what this pixeling is choosing to focus on or like look at. So they could already focus on things like other pixelings, on objects in the world, such as the trees and the critters. That's a rabbit, if that's not very obvious. And that's a pig, and it just died. So they can choose to focus on these things already, but now they can also focus on what another pixeling is wearing. So if there's like something on the head of a pixeling, then they can focus on that, or in their hands. They can focus on what themselves are carrying, and they can focus on themselves, and they can focus on even on crazy stuff like the focus of what they're currently like. A pixeling is looking at another pixeling, and then they can choose to look at what that pixeling is looking at. So things like these. I think that would also enable them to have more interesting behaviors in the future. Another thing that they can now do is that they can also choose what they're interested in. So if I turn this on, you can see that they have these attention, like I call these attention points. So basically they get information about 5 objects around them in the world, and they can kind of choose what they're interested in. So they can say, okay, I'm interested in critters, or I'm interested in other pixelings, or I'm interested in trees. Whatever they want, they can get information about. So they now kind of have this way to choose what to look for in the world. And then this is like the first step for them to choose something to focus on. They first choose, okay, I'm interested in trees, and then they can choose one of the trees that I'm giving them to then also focus on. I've also made some updates to the memory of their brains in general, so I hope that's going to work a little bit better. But yeah, I think that's the big updates in this version. In general, I wanted to say that I'm currently working on just making the state of the world more complex. Like, I want each pixeling to have a lot more states, so that's why I'm working on things like giving them a way to equip things, because then there are more ways for them to find a niche to live in. So for instance, you could have pixelings that specialize in, you know, finding rocks and putting them on their heads, and that's like what they do. They can also do things like, if they put an egg on their head, then that egg will actually develop faster. So what I'm hoping is that, or what I've seen before when I've been running simulations now as well, is that they eventually evolve to, you know, carry around these eggs for longer, because then the offspring is going to have a better chance of survival, because it won't be like an egg that is exposed in the world for a long time. Instead, it's an egg that's on top of their heads for a shorter time, and it will hatch faster. So you get differences in strategies for how to handle the young. You can either do a lot of eggs everywhere, or you can carry around an egg and be very careful about it, and invest more into it, basically. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this dev update. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next time.